Saludos, que lo que mi gente. This is your brother David Rodriguez with another episode of Hispaniola History Channel. This presentation is titled La Doña, Spanish Woman of Conquest. Who were some of these women loyal to the Spanish crown and its colonization of the Americas? How did this change the narrative of the mostly male-dominated so-called Spanish conquest? This is La Doña, Spanish Woman of Conquest, on the Hispaniola History Channel. Let's go.
Dímelo. Oye, this is the Hispaniola History Channel. La Historia de Hispaniola, presented by David Rodriguez.
Of course, before I get into this presentation, just want to remind folks that I did a episode about a year back focusing on the founding women of Hispaniola, Ana Caona, Queen Isabella, and La Negra de Hospital, women who played vital roles in early history of Hispaniola, but also the diversity of the ethnicities and racial backgrounds of the various women that make up what is the Dominican today in terms of ancestral backgrounds. Of course, we want to debunk the face of the Spanish conquistador in mainstream America, in media and in history books and documentaries. We always get that image of that light-skinned, bearded Spaniard conquering and subjugating the natives in the so-called Spanish conquest. But as we move along in learning more about the history, we know that this is a far-fetched, over-exaggerated propaganda that seems to be still going on to this day. We know that Indians and Native Americans also participated in big numbers. A lot of Tainos and some of the tribes in the Caribbean, and as well as the mainland tribes, particularly the Mayans, who joined the Spanish in the thousands. We showed proof of that, and I have more sources and references I'll be showing in future episodes on the participation of the Mayans in the Spanish conquest. Also, black conquistadors. This is a topic that's been covered before in terms of Negroes, mulattoes, black people, or Africans, whatever title you want to place on melanated people that actually participated in the conquest and were on the front lines in a lot of these major campaigns and expeditions and wars. But now we're going to get into Spanish women who actually participated. Is there a history of that? We're going into the source, The Conquistadors, a short introduction by Matthew Ristal and Felipe Fernandez Ernesto. I cover some of Matthew Ristal's work. He's a great historian when it comes to Latin American history and also indigenous history. Publication put together by Oxford University Press. Reading at page 60, it says here, of the thousands or so Spaniards who entered Mexico in the few years following the 1519 Cortez landing, 19 were women whose participation in the invasion justifies calling them conquistadoras. There is evidence that at least 5 of them actually fought. A trio of conquistadoras in South America achieved some lasting notoriety. Inez Suarez voyaged to Venezuela and Peru in search of her husband, and when she discovered he had died, she joined Pedro de Valdivia Conquest Company in Chile. There she became the captain's lover, fought the Araucanians, and helped defend Santiago in 1541, and was awarded an encomienda in 1545. She is still remembered in Chile today. So here's some accounts of women participating in the Spanish conquest, calling them conquistadoras. Let's go to another source, someinterestingfacts.net article written, Spanish conquistador women, says here, more than 500 years after Columbus' first voyage to America, or Las Indias, the name of which the colonies were erroneously known, the story we were told completely ignores the role of women, says Spanish Real Admiral Gonzalo Rodriguez Gonzalo Ayer. The denial of a female presence only serves to reinforce the black legend. Let me read that again. The denial of a female presence only serves to reinforce the black legend and the stereotype of the bloodthirsty conquistador. The bloodthirsty conquistador, with no mention of the crucial female legacy. Many of these women displayed a remarkable strength of character, refusing to be left on the terra firma while their husbands went to wage war overseas. Shortly before Pedro Arias de Villa was led to the largest Spanish expedition to the New World, 19 vessels and 1,500 men, in 1514, the general received a letter from his wife, Isabel de Bobadilla, demanding to be taken on the voyage. "Wherever fortune may lead you," she wrote, "be it on the furious waves of the sea or to face horrible dangers on land, I shall be by your side. I offer you the choice. Cut my throat with your sword or agree to take me." So there's an account by a Isabella de Bobadilla who demanded to be taken to participate in the conquest. Here's a story of Maria Estrada. It says here, Maria Estrada, military prowess was of truly epic proportions. On the night of the 30th of June, 1520, Hernan Cortez and his followers were forced to fight their way out of Tenochtitlan, the present-day Mexico City, when it was discovered that the Aztec king Montezuma II, a hostage of the Spaniards, had been treacherously murdered. Maria de Estrada, who accompanied the Spanish troops, brandished her sword with such a fury that, as noted in contemporary chronicles, she succeeded the efforts of any man. The story of Maria de Estrada. Here's the story of Isabel de Barrito, the Senora Captain. Isabel de Barrito was the wife of Alvaro de Mandana, who had been appointed Captain General of the Solomon Islands. In 1596, she joined her husband's expedition to the South Pacific archipelago, but en route they were battled by storms so severe that only one of the 4 galleons reached the islands. Some of the crew mutinied when the gold and pearls had been promised failed to materialize. Wielding a machete, Isabel fought alongside her husband to put down the rebellion. So the story of Isabel de Barrito of helping her husband put down a rebellion that was going on in the South Pacific. So to summary and recap some of these stories here, the image of the bearded, light-skinned Spaniard, which is given to us in the mainstream narrative, is not exclusively true, as we see in some of these accounts. As we know, Negroes and Native Americans participated in the so-called Spanish conquest, and women as well. There were many women that participated in the Spanish exploration and expeditions in the Americas. Spanish men also took their wives into the Americas, and some of them demanded to participate in the expeditions and conquest. So why is this important? Well, because it debunks the notion of inequality based on race and gender. So these were early equal rights movements of Spanish women in the Americas, and debunks the idea of the sex-crazed single Spanish men that were mass raping the natives. I mean, if you're bringing your wives and your family, that minimizes the notion and the tendencies of people who will come here primarily to seek women, right? Which also destroys some of the machismo propaganda against Hispanic Americans, particularly against Hispanic American men, how they haven't allowed their wives or their women to reach certain heights and certain positions and certain statuses. But here we have clear examples saying otherwise, giving a different story of how Spanish women were participating and were side by side with their husbands in a lot of these expeditions. So of course, this debunking and exposing the black legend continues of propagating this, total domination of white Spanish men subjugating women, Negroes, and Native Americans to under their will, when actually there was a participation of all those groups: Spanish men, Negroes, Native Americans, and women, in terms of colonization and settling of what we know today of Latin America. So to end on that note, this is La Doña. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. Spanish Women of the Conquest. This is your brother David Rodriguez with another episode of Hispaniola History Channel. Good night. Peace.